One of the more commonly asked questions concerning religion is, what about all the evil done by religion? Well, in this two-part series, we're going to be taking a journey to the dark side, taking a look at two of the darkest periods of human history, perpetrated in fact by two non-religious groups, whose crimes against humanity making even the Crusades and the Inquisition look like Sunday school picnics. Few professions are more admired today than the medical profession, a profession that's dedicated to healing and not to harming. And this is largely thanks to a leading Greek physician who lived over 2,000 years ago. Hippocrates is often referred to as the father of Western medicine, and is best known for the oath named after him, the Hippocratic Oath, an oath which more or less has become the ethical foundation upon which Western medicine has been built. Because a physician ultimately holds the power of life or death in his hands, Hippocrates knew how easily corruptible his profession could become, how either through the desire of personal gain or coercion, a physician was capable of inflicting great harm. So in order to prevent abuse, Hippocrates composed his oath to set a precedent that under no circumstance was a physician to harm or kill. This here is a Nazi propaganda poster, posing the question if the life of the psychiatric patient was really worth all the money that was spent in keeping them alive. The Nazis referred to such a person as a useless eater, someone who was incapable of taking care of himself but instead relied solely upon the state to keep him alive. And psychiatric patients in Nazi Germany weren't the only ones labeled as useless eaters. The physically disabled were equally held with the same contempt. And mental illness soon became a much more fluid term, used to describe just about anyone whom the Nazis felt were social misfits, such as gay people. And so in the name of preventing these genetic defects from being passed on to future generations, between 1933 and 1939, the German medical establishment forcibly sterilized over 400,000 German citizens. But for Adolf Hitler, even those extreme measures didn't go far enough. Even if unable to procreate, these useless eaters still required vast amounts of money and institutional care for decades to come. So when World War II broke out in 1939, he initiated the infamous T4 program. Physicians at psychiatric institutions, hospitals, homes for the elderly, and even those overseeing children's wards were ordered to evaluate those under their care, and those deemed unfit were bused to special locations where they were secretly murdered. It's estimated that roughly 70,000 people lost their lives, 5,000 being mentally and physically handicapped children. Initially, patients were simply starved to death or had life-saving medicine withheld. But when you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to liquidate, well, those methods simply take too long. So, more efficient means were devised, such as gassing trucks. Victims were tricked into thinking that they were being transported somewhere else, but when the back doors were sealed shut, the truck's exhaust fumes were piped directly inside, taking between 20 to 30 minutes before the victims were finally dead. But what would become the most preferred method was the world's first use of the gas chamber, operated by German physicians at 6 killing locations established across Germany and Austria. Now, due to a large public outcry within Germany, largely thanks to the German Roman Catholic Church, the Action T4 program was officially cancelled in August of 1941. Unfortunately, it continued to operate covertly until the war's end, claiming an additional 200,000 lives. The last disabled child to be murdered was on May 25th, 1945. That was a month and a half after the last concentration camp was liberated, and 3 weeks after Nazi Germany had already surrendered. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, wow, that sounds like the Holocaust. Well, that's because the T4 program was a precursor to more ominous things to come. For the methods used during the final solution were first perfected on the mentally and physically disabled, with many of the experienced medical personnel of the now cancelled T4 program overseeing the much larger gas chambers at the concentration camps. And at the camps, German physicians also conducted many horrific human medical experiments upon the inmates, the most notorious being Joseph Mengele, who conducted gruesome experiments upon the most vulnerable of all, children. Now, it should be noted that there were some German physicians who objected and did all that they could to save the lives of those under their care, but clearly they were in the minority. Simply put, both the T4 program and the Holocaust could never have happened on the scale that they did without the willing participation of the vast majority of German physicians and the legitimacy that their profession gave to it all. Now you might well be thinking to yourself, gee Mark, thanks for the rather depressing history lesson, but what did any of that have to do with answering the question concerning religious evil? Well, okay then. After considering all that I've just presented, could a rational argument therefore be made that Western medicine is fundamentally evil and should be abolished, that the Hippocratic Oath incites violence and hatred towards others, and that your local family doctor is really nothing but a psychopath, a racist, child abuser, and hypocrite? Of course not. It's clear that what the German physicians did was in clear violation of the historical traditions of Western medicine. The Hippocratic Oath must be judged upon what it said, not upon the actions of those who chose to ignore it thousands of years later. So why is it then that when the Church completely violates the teachings of Jesus Christ, critics claim that it is in fact Christianity itself that is the source of all the problems? Now, I certainly hope that this video isn't viewed as an attempt to gloss over the sins of the Church. But when critics attempt to use the Crusades or the Inquisition as a means to discredit Christianity, is that really any different than if someone were to attempt to use the T4 program in the Holocaust as a means to discredit the Western medical profession, with both of those events making the Crusades and the Inquisition look like Sunday school picnics? Hey, thanks for watching. Quickly, which has killed more people, religion or atheism? And which one of the two has persecuted more gays? Well, to find out those answers, stay tuned to the next episode, which will be coming out in early 2015.